thinking that I won't react. You whisper in my name, thinking I won't be the same. Turn fiction into fact. See what you didn't know, bruises that I'll never show, slipping on your every jab. So tighten up your fist, step into the ring with this. I hope your mama's got your back. First round, you thought you would've knocked me down. Fifth round, bleeding out the side of your mouth. Final round, holding the sound of my name in the crowd. You hit a buzz. Oh, 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 oh. You hit a buzz. Oh, 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 oh. Just 'cause I took a break, you're making a huge mistake, thinking you can take the throne. Look at you trembling, step into the lion's den. Bet you wish you stayed at home, begging for mercy underneath your breath when I ain't even sweating yet. My legend's written in the stone, yeah. You're crying, Adrian, defeat is now your only friend. Even your mama's gotta know. First round, you thought you would've knocked me down. Fifth round, bleeding out the side of your mouth. Final round, holding the sound of my name in the crowd. You hit a buzz. Oh, 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 oh. You hit a buzz. Oh, 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 First round, fifth round, final round. Oh, yeah. First round, fifth round, final round. No, 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 no. First round, you thought you would've knocked me down. Fifth round, bleeding out the side of your mouth. Final round, holding the sound of my name in the crowd. You hit a buzz. Oh, 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 oh. You hit a buzz. Oh, 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 oh.
Dear friends, Operator Starsky here, and this is In Time.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to In Time. My name is Nicholas Lamar Suter, and with me today is Xandring. Pay no mind to the Commander Macmillan in the middle. We don't have him with us right now. Xandring, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good.
Good.
Soaking up the sun in Texas.
Oh, well, my condolences.
I'm in the good part of Texas.
Oh, good. I have a thing with Texas, as everybody knows, or almost everybody. So it's interesting. We did a show. We did breaking news earlier today. As you know, the budget failed to get out of committee, which is stunning. It would be far more stunning if it failed to pass Congress, but it failed to get out of a Republican-held committee. And we discussed the reasons why. We're going to discuss them again in brief when we do the show, but that in and of itself was breaking news. And then in the interim, Moody's downgraded the U.S. credit, which they did just a couple of hours ago. There are three credit rating agencies that rate sovereign debt and the value of companies and so on and so forth. Moody's, Standard & Poor's, and Fitch. Fitch? I'll look it up. I've forgotten. Everyone knows Standard & Poor's and Moody's. Those are the two biggest ones. Fitch ratings. So they downgraded us from AAA to AA1. Now, we'll get into what that means and why that's important in just a minute. But that, in and of itself, is also breaking news. They were the last of the three to downgrade us. The other two downgraded us earlier. Standard & Poor's downgraded us for even having the discussion of not raising the debt ceiling, which we'll get into why that was an issue. Shortly after the economic crisis of 2007, 2008, and Fitch followed in 2023. So, we've been downgraded yet again. Any thoughts on what you said? There's a large number of goat effigies being burned. It's a concerning number of goats being burned in the live chat. I'm starting to feel slightly threatened. Any
goats
thoughts?
On fire.
Yeah.
Actually surprised they didn't downgrade us more and sooner.
I am too.
There's no semblance of fiscal responsibility in Congress, like at all.
Well, and these are the same agencies, by the way, that did not check any of the underlying bonds in the credit default swaps during the crisis. They rated all of them as AAA when most of them were junk bond status. They took fees for the ratings, gave a AAA rating. That was it. So all of these ratings agencies have a poor history with the truth and are willing to look the other way if it gives them business. And that is an extraordinarily serious problem when your job is to provide an accurate assessment of the economic stability of either a business, a mortgage-backed security, or a government. Standard & Poor's was in the 80s the gold standard, and now the fact that Moody's just downgraded us is shocking, and by so little. So what I'm going to do, what I think we should do, is talk a little bit about what the U.S. sovereign debt is, and then how it's acquired, why it's an issue, and who thinks it's an issue and who doesn't, because there are people who say it's not an issue for various reasons. And we're going to have just a sort of a general discussion on the U.S. sovereign debt and how we got here and why. So, one, I'd like to point something out. Debt is not necessarily a bad thing. Credit in and of itself, which is how you get debt, is with credit. Credit is usually a very good thing. Credit is how you start a business. Most businesses need to get credit from a bank or from some source to get their business started. It's how you get a home. These aren't bad things. These have been very useful, and credit is an extraordinarily powerful tool when wielded properly. Debt is essentially credit. So debt is an extraordinarily powerful tool when wielded properly. Debt can be leveraged, which is Trump's preferred method of making money, is to leverage his debt into even more debt, into even more debt. And it's very dangerous, because if whatever you're using for that leverage suddenly goes in the other direction, things get out of control quickly. That's again what happened in 2007, 2008, which we've discussed before and we will not revisit here. But the U.S. debt comes in many forms, but the most common is U.S. Treasury bonds and or securities. So the government says, we need money, and we're not getting enough money out of tax revenue, so we're going to issue bonds. And what a bond is just a piece of paper that says, you pay $1,000, $100, $20, whatever, for this piece of paper, and we will pay you that back in a period of time, plus interest. Okay, why would anyone buy a bond? Well, bonds tend to have better return rates than a bank. So you could leave your money in a bank where you could get it out right away, or you could get a bond. And a bond is usually considered to be as safe as having it in the bank, but you're going to get a higher return on your investment rate, and it's not as dangerous as, say, putting it in stocks, where if the business goes out of business, you lose all your money. So it's kind of risk versus reward. Treasuries are considered a great way to put your money into something that you're going to get some money out of, maybe beat inflation. It's better than keeping your money under the mattress. And so the government issues these, and that is the largest portion of our debt, is these bonds that we've issued. And we issue them to Americans, we issue them to hedge funds, we issue them to China, that holds a huge amount of our debt, and they buy these bonds. Why buy these bonds? Again, they're making money. It's better than keeping it in the bank. It is less risky than putting it in the stock market, and it's an investment, presumably, because the U.S. can then take that money to do something and grow. So the U.S. We call it investing in the U.S. It is investing in the U.S., but it's really kind of adding to our debt, and so hopefully we're doing something good with that money. If you've been paying attention to Congress, you know where this is headed. So, where is that debt, and how did we get there? This is a graph of where the debt was in the early 1900s and where it is as of today. And you can see that in just about 2000s, it started to grow very, very rapidly. I remember when it hit 5,000 and we said this was unacceptably high, and it is now up to 25 trillion, which is a huge amount of debt. Now, this is money that we owe. Now, every day, some of these bonds become due. That's because we've been issuing so many bonds for so long. Every day, bonds are due, and we have to pay back those bonds. We pay you back your $20 and whatever interest payments that we owe on that. And again, every day, we pay those back. Every day, we acquire more. So when we talk about the credit ceiling and what that's been, the problem is we need to maintain every month the interest on this debt, the interest that we are paying to the people who have taken out U.S. Treasury bonds, or however else we've acquired this debt. There are other ways for us to acquire debt. That's the biggest and easiest way to discuss. So we have to pay them. If it looks like we're not going to pay them, people aren't going to be interested in buying our debt anymore. So we have to make it more appealing. How do we make it more appealing? We say we'll raise the interest rates. We say, tell you what, instead of giving you 4% on these bonds, we'll give you 10%. And then people say, okay, yeah, maybe I'll do that for 10%. But now we have to pay much more interest to get these bonds out to people and to get that money. So we want to keep interest rates as low as possible. How do you do that? Good credit. This is where Moody, Standards & Poor's, and Fitch comes in. If they're listing AAA, what that means is if you invest in the United States, you buy our bonds, you're going to get your money back. These companies are standing by the fact the U.S. will give you your money back. As we drop in those ratings, people say, I don't want to put my money in someone who's not AAA. So they'll go to another country that's AAA, or they'll go to another source of investment. When Greece started its collapse, they had to pay 20 or 30% on their bonds to get anyone even remotely interested in it. And those people knew there was a decent chance they weren't getting paid back. If they got paid back, they'd make 30% on their investment. So, I mean, there's a chance to make a lot of money, but there's a lot of risk there too. So that's what the credit rating measures, is the risk of investing in that company. The question is, What is the risk right now of investing in the U.S.? Moody's today lowered their financial rating for us, joining the other two from AAA, which is the highest, to AA1. And they have said in a statement, we expect federal deficits to widen, reaching nearly 9% of the U.S. economy by 2035, up from 6.4% in 2024, driven mainly by increased interest payments on debt. That's what I was just talking about, the interest payments. Rising entitlement spending, so that's an increase in spending as baby boomers and large numbers of people get into the Social Security system. And increased needs in Medicare and Medicaid, especially as a result of long COVID and other diseases. And relatively low revenue generation. So Moody's says we are not making enough money. They are correct on all of those fronts. Those are the reasons that we have an economic problem. And people look at this huge increase and they say, what do we do about it? Is the U.S. going to ever be able to pay that back? Does it matter if the U.S. will be able to pay that back? It seems like it should. Paul Krugman is a rather famous economist who says it doesn't. We'll talk about his theories in a minute. But that is, in a nutshell, what the debt is, what the interest is. Again and again, we pay, and here is this graph, I believe, is what is the interest as a percentage. Is this interest? This is U.S. debt in, okay, and this takes inflation into account. So this is what the percentage of GDP the debt is. So you can see and I think United States debt in dollars and the percentage of GDP. So you can see that the debt has gone up as GDP has gone up, but it's gone up much, much faster. GDP is our gross domestic product. It is how much money and products, services that we make as a country. So, the lower our credit rating gets, the more we're going to have to pay in interest, and that even includes some of the debt, which is variable rate, that we currently have. A lot of it isn't. Treasury bonds tend not to be actually, they're not variable rate. So they're at the rate, but we're selling new bonds every day. So if the interest rates go up, the bonds that we sell tomorrow are going to be at a higher rate. And next month, we're paying more to maintain the debt that we currently have. So it is a complicated and difficult problem that hopefully I've explained in a way that people understand and make sense. If anybody has any questions that I haven't explained, please get into it. Xandering, if you think I've missed anything, please get into it. But I would like to bring you into this now and tell me your thoughts on the general understanding of the system so far.
Well, I think that's a fairly decent recap. If you really remember when the national debt was only $5,000. Then you are way older.
Yeah,
I mean, you look so good for your age.
Between you and LJ, I'm getting trolled by and LJ has friends. This is the thing. This is the thing that LJ has friends. So we got burning goats. We got, wife said, "Why are you doing a YouTube channel?" And I said, "You know why? Wear a jacket. I'm going to do it because I want respect." Because I demand respect and I command respect. And when she was done laughing, I said, I'm going to prove you wrong. And I started this channel, and now even my head mod is nothing I can do. All right.
It's all been downhill since.
It's all exactly. So can we go back a step and say that I meant to say 5 trillion? With a T. That would be...
That seems more reasonable.
The 1990s. When everybody was freaking out. I remember when it hit 5 trillion, like, this year, and people were on the House floor. This year it hit 5 trillion. We won't survive if it gets to 6. We have to stop it now, and we are now looking at 32 to 35.
We're like 35 and a half. trillion in debt
Yeah.
right now, and that's a number that kind of staggers the mind. Like when we aren't particularly good at comprehending such vastness,
Yeah.
things of that size, whether in quantity or in distances, and it's like because we're medium-sized creatures that live in a medium-sized world, and when you start dealing with numbers of that size, your brain just doesn't quite pick up just how much that is. I mean, like, oh yeah, it's trillion. Well, that's a lot, because that's more than a billion. It's 1,000 billions. So yeah, it's a lot, and I don't see how. And I realize that this is a kind of a fallacy, but it staggers the mind to try and figure out how you repay that. Given the things that the government has obligated itself to pay, the budgetary constraints that we have, and the fact that there doesn't appear to be anybody really that's particularly interested in any kind of fiscal responsibility as far as actually shrinking our deficits and our national debt.
Why is that? Short of, and that's one reason why we did the breaking news, is because it is a shock to see, conservatives doing what they say and what they have meant and what they said they've meant, which is that they're gonna stand up. And we don't know if they're going to continue to, but today they stood up and said, no, we are against this, and 5 of them issued a humiliating defeat to the Republican agenda, to Republicans in Congress, and especially to Speaker. This is humiliating, and they said, no, this has gone too far, and that when we've been lying when we say that this budget will decrease the debt, and they have been lying, and we know they've been lying. We've talked about how everybody knows they've been lying. They know they're lying. Why, except for these guys, has there been no interest in having that conversation?
Generally speaking, because it's political suicide. They can't address it. The government has passed too many, is doing too many things, is spending money on too many things, and the only solution here is to start cutting programs. Most of those programs, some of the biggest programs that are sucking up a large portion of money, are programs that have been in place for quite some time. And if you even talk about Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, all of the main entitlement programs that the government currently has, that's a huge chunk of money. Well, nobody wants to go to the American people and say, yes, we realize that we instituted all of these programs, a lot of people took advantage of these programs and now are dependent upon these programs. A lot of people need these programs to make it. What are you gonna do? Just end it? What are you gonna do? Just leave grandma at the nursing home without any medical care at all? It's like, how do you do that? We need to cut the money. Well, that's political suicide, because those are incredibly popular and very well used programs. All right, well, then I guess the only kind of other option we really have is to raise taxes. Well, you can tell just how it's like, Democrats will raise taxes. I think they're at least a little bit more honest in the fact that, hey, we need to tax more people. They're more recently are much more interested in taxing the wealthy, which I understand the idea behind it, but you're going to start trying to tax the people who have the most resources to get out of being taxed. And on top of that, you're going to leave in place the current IRS code that we have that gives them all of the loopholes that they need to in order to get out of those taxes.
Yes.
It's like that doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. And so raising taxes is also unpopular just generally across the board, especially in that middle class area, because a lot of people are living paycheck to paycheck or nearly so. So yeah, raising taxes is completely okay. Nick, I want you to run for congressman for Massachusetts.
Yes, sir.
And your platform is going to be, I'm going to cut 30% of every single department in the federal government, and I'm going to raise everybody's tax burden by at least 10%. And that includes the people right now who pay a net zero tax, federal income tax. which is approximately 48% of the population ends up paying a net zero federal income tax. They still pay FICA taxes. There's other taxes that they do pay, but they get the money that they give back to the government back in return. You're going to need to tell all of those people that, no, I'm sorry, your withholding will not ever be returned to you. The money that you pull out of your check will stay with the government, and you won't get any of that back. All these tax credits that you're taking advantage of and you really need, because you're raising a family, you're trying to purchase a home, you're not going to get any of those anymore. The money that comes out of your check every single month is simply gone. You won't get any of it back. And I want you to get elected on that platform. Do you think you could do that?
I am supremely confident that I would have a snowball's chance in hell.
Which is exactly why the supposed party of conservatism, which should include fiscal conservatism, is not particularly interested in actually addressing this problem or being fiscally conservative, because they will very quickly not be in politics anymore, because that is incredibly unpopular. I mean, we've run across the issue of a moral hazard. And I firmly believe that allowing the government essentially free reign to borrow money whenever and however they want is a moral hazard, because they, in order to stay in power, they're willing to put in new programs, they're willing to up programs, and many of these programs are needed and should be there and should be funded, but we don't really have the money to pay for it. And debt can be incredibly useful to leverage to get something useful now. It brings a lot of benefit right now, and you can pay for it over time. So we start getting the benefits of this, and oftentimes can end up offsetting the total cost of the project if you can get it started now. The highway interstate system was a great example. The amount of efficiency that introduced, especially into our own economic logistics, was incredible. So there's definitely good uses for it, but I still think that it is a moral hazard when you end up $36 trillion in debt with a budget that is continuing to swell, a debt that has not slowed down, is actually exponentially growing. You don't want to have this kind of situation set up where you get us into a sovereign debt crisis, especially a country this big and a country that is this used to this high a standard of living compared to the rest of the world. So that's not a good combination to have. It's like I am shocked that we have been able to do this. I mean, for as long as we have. Most countries cannot do this. There's a weird thing going on with the debt to GDP ratio in Japan. They still have us beat, but yeah, it's most countries like Greece, Italy, Spain, Portugal, Ireland, all of those countries had significant sovereign debt crises during the 2008 financial debacle. And there's no one bigger than the United States. There's no one to bail us out. And it's like in the 2000s, you had kind of a personal debt crisis with the dot-com bubble busting. You saw that downturn. Yes. Then we had 2008. That was a corporate and state level debt problem, and the U.S. government bailed many companies out, bailed the banks out. And many states that were having huge problems, states couldn't do anything about it either. So a lot of the states got some money to help them with their budgetary issues. This next crisis, I mean, it just keeps rolling uphill. The problems keep, rolling uphill if you don't fundamentally change what you're doing and you continue down the same generalized path. The problems get bigger. Well, the next one is going to be a sovereign debt crisis, and there is no one higher than the United States to look to help bail the U.S. out. I guess you could hope that the world would come together, since we have the world reserve currency, and that, I believe, is what has allowed us to do all of the things that we're doing without very many apparent consequences, because we can ship interest, or we can ship inflation overseas fairly easily. We can spread out the inflation across all of the globe because almost all commodities are priced in dollars and they use dollars to buy them. So it's, we spread our money all the way around the world. So, irresponsible fiscal and monetary policy in the United States is the consequences of those are very widely dispersed. We're starting to approach a time where we can't disperse those problems anymore. It's like we've built up a big enough problem. How do you? I mean, I guess it's like, how do you eat a whale? One bite at a time. How do you pay off a $36 trillion debt $1 at a time? I guess, except that expect it to take 36 trillion years to do that. So, I don't see how you can do this without some serious sacrifices. It's like we've ridden kind of high on the hog as far as governmental spending for quite some time. And I truly believe that if you were to cut off the federal government's ability to borrow money, maybe throw an exemption in there if Russia decided to invade Alaska, okay, we can borrow some money to defend Alaska. But just say as a general year-to-year daily thing, it's not some sort of exigent emergency that's happening. Don't allow them to borrow money. The only way that they can fund those programs is actually by raising taxes. I think that very quickly the American people would not be very interested in the federal government doing a whole lot of things because it's very expensive. The U.S. taxpayer isn't paying anywhere close to what the federal government's actually spending, hence why our debt keeps going up. So I don't know how you fix it because any way you go, it's like people aren't in a particularly great financial position right now anyway. The economy's not doing super great. Thanks, Mr. I'm all about the economy, Trump. It's like you haven't made anything better. So I don't know how the debt just keeps going. I mean, eventually it will be a problem. I'm amazed that we've made a debt this big without it being much of a problem. But I mean, debts aren't much of a problem until suddenly they are. It's kind of like how do rich people go bankrupt? Slowly at first, and then all of a sudden.
And then very quickly.
That's exactly what. Yeah, very quickly, and all of a sudden, and that's exactly what will happen to our government as well. I mean, it's everything will be chugging along just fine, and it'll seem just fine, and it will seem like oh my God, there's a crisis, and now suddenly it is a huge problem. And now we're looking at defaulting on the debt or printing our way and causing massive inflation, trying to print our way out of debt. Any of these solutions are going to cause a chain reaction of other problems of the quote unquote unintended consequences, except we know what the consequences of these actions are going to be, and they'll do it anyway, because you can't just simply default on the whole thing. You can't let the whole thing collapse like that. They're going to try something to fix it. And we know these problems exist, and we know these problems are coming. And yet the world just keeps chugging on going, hey, U.S. debt, it's good. Well, we always get our money.
And that is so that's why today has been so the amount of debt that we have and the fact that we're willing to, I mean, Mitch McConnell had said that the debt ceiling was a hostage worth taking, and the reason just suggesting that reduced our credit is because we're telling the people that we're lending money to that would actually consider not paying them back as a political weapon. And he was like, well, they know we're not serious. Well, if they know we're not serious, then the Democrats would know you're not serious. So then why are you saying it? So either, you're not serious or you are. Which is it? You can't have it both ways. And that did not have the catastrophic damage that people had anticipated, but the rate drop was a lot lower than people anticipated too. We thought would go down 2 or 3 ratings. We only went down 1, and we went down 1 today with Moody's. What effect that will have, we don't know. It is one of those things where it's a lot like Jenga. You keep pulling a piece out, and the tower is getting taller and taller, and tower is getting taller and taller and taller, but less and less stable. And you don't know which piece is going to be the one that's going to cause the whole thing to collapse, but that's exactly what happened, starting with Goldman Sachs in 2007. And nobody knew who it was going to start with or when. but everybody, not everybody, but the people who were paying attention, which there was a great deal more than people thought, knew at some point it was going to happen. It was inevitable. There are a couple of interesting caveats to this. So far, the debt is so high that it paying it off seems utterly impossible. Now Paul Krugman is a respected economist who has said that it's natural to be concerned about it, but actually we do not need to be. The reason we don't need to be, and I'm going to talk about him, and I'm going to talk about modern monetary politics. Here's the interesting thing, which is I'm a fan of economics. I love economics. People think it's about numbers and math. It's not. The numbers and math helps. It's human psychology. It's why do we value the things that we value, and what are we going to do when put in certain circumstances. You had mentioned moral hazard earlier. For those of you who don't know what moral hazard is, it just means that when the consequences are divorced from your actions, you're more likely to do reckless and stupid things. And it's true, and it's an axiom of psychology, but the reason they call it moral hazard is because it was actually invented, the concept and the discovery of this was by a actuary in an insurance company who discovered that people were less likely to lock their cars in nice neighborhoods. It's a nice neighborhood, and people who had insurance were more likely to lock their cars than people who didn't. That's simple. So our motives influence, and if we can get, it's the marshmallow test. If we can get a really nice reward now and either never pay the consequences or pay the consequences later, we have a tendency to go for the reward now and offset the consequences. We're not very good with delayed gratification or consequences. Paul Krugman said, here's the thing. You're looking at the economy of the United States like that of a person, and it makes sense. There's a lot of similarities. It's like a household with a credit card debt and a mortgage and all that. Okay. Except people die. And then the debt needs to be dissolved, or the assets need to. And people don't have certain obligations and don't have certain resources that can be leveraged by an entire country. And the assumption is that the debt needs to be paid off, when in reality only one thing needs to happen. One thing and one thing only. And that's you have to maintain the interest on the debt. That's all. And as long as you don't exceed what you can do with that, who cares how much the debt is? The Brits are still paying off some of the Napoleonic Wars. They still have debt from that era. It doesn't matter because they're not, there's not going to come until the UK dissolves as a country, which no one's expecting at any time in our generation. Nobody really worries about how much debt they have. They worry, are we getting the interest payments now? Period. End of discussion. That's what he says.
Hey, Nick.
So, yeah, yes, sir.
What are the two components that determine what your interest payment is going to be?
The amount, well, the two things. First is your credit rating, and then the amount.
No, there's two things. Your
okay.
Credit rating is tertiary. The credit rating is tertiary. The interest rate.
Okay.
And
yes.
Your credit rating will affect your interest rate.
Yeah.
And the amount of debt you're financing.
Yes.
So to say that how much your debt is doesn't really matter at all is a little disingenuous. And I like Paul Krugman. I listen to Paul Krugman. He won a Nobel Prize. But I have to kind of take him to task on that when it says the amount of debt you have doesn't matter. All that matters is if you can service. So long as you can service your debt.
Yes.
Except that the amount of debt you have is directly proportional to how much it costs you to service your debt. So you still need to be concerned about that, because if your debt goes too high, you will no longer be able to service the debt.
I agree.
So,
I think
I
I think
understand what he's trying to get at, but I think that he's disingenuous in the way that he went about it.
well, I think there's an advantage to what he said and a strong disadvantage. The advantage, and I think what he's trying to get people to consider, is don't worry about the number that the debt is, whether it's 5 trillion or 31, doesn't matter. What matters is what are the interest rates. And right now, 6% of our GDP is going to servicing the interest on the debt, which is a pretty high amount, but we can pay it. It's like, so as long as we can pay it, all of this people worrying about how high the number is, we just need to be able to pay that. And as long as we can pay it for generations, nobody is going to get mad at us for the size of the debt, so long as everybody is getting the interest payments exactly on time and when needed. The problem is, if the interest rates change for any reason, say a global pandemic, rise in the LIBOR rate, any kind of mass panic, major collapse
in the housing market,
collapse in the housing or the stock market. If the stock market collapses, everybody's going to want to go to treasury bonds because bonds are safer than the stock market. So as soon as the demand for bonds goes up, then they can charge more in interest rate for those bonds, and all of a sudden the interest rates on those bonds go up. So even if you keep a perfect eye on how much you have to pay, that number is variable. There is no way to know for certain what that number is going to be next year. And we do know that next year that number will be slightly higher than it was this year because Moody's just downgraded us. And the reality is, at some point, these ratings agencies are going to realize they're no longer credible if they don't start taking U.S. debt seriously. And they didn't take the mortgage. I mean, the day before Merrill Lynch basically went out of business and collapsed, they were saved. Wait, was Merrill Lynch saved, or was that I keep confusing Merrill Lynch with the other one. Goldman Sachs went out. But the day before, they all got AAA ratings for everything that they had on their books. AAA rating. All of it was garbage. And the companies knew it was garbage, but the ones that were paying them were Merrill Lynch, Morgan Stanley, all of those guys. So in order to collect the fees, they just said, we'll give you the AAA rating. You just pay a fee it was fee shopping. So if these agencies decide, and by the way, BRICS is the attempt. It's an organization that's attempting to move off the dollar as the world reserve currency. If that happens, then that number that Paul Krugman is talking about ignoring, the 35 trillion, all of a sudden does become important. It's not nearly as important right now in a very narrow framework that he's set up. He's right. It's not important as long as we can continue to pay. But how can we continue to pay if all of a sudden interest rates change or all of a sudden the U.S. does not have the world reserve currency? Then we're going to have a big problem, and how big a problem depends on that number that he's saying we can ignore. So, yeah.
Well, you also run into the problem of this number that he says that we can ignore, just so long as we can continue to pay. The bigger that number gets, much like compounding interest, the bigger the sudden problem becomes if anything happens. Because 10% of $1,000, not that big of a deal if things go wrong. 10% of $1 billion, now that's a heck of a chunk of change, let alone $36 trillion. So, and when you look at the graphs of the amount of debt the U.S. is building, even adjusted for inflation, it is still an exponential rise. And he's like, well, hey, it's only 6% of GDP. Yeah, except that we're not using GDP to pay our debts. We're using tax revenues and debt to pay our debts. So you really need to address how much is, what percentage of the federal budget is servicing the interest rate. I really dislike, it's okay for a measurement metric, saying, oh, well, interest servicing the debt as a percentage of our GDP is very good to kind of standardize and keep a relational, because then it gets rid of inflation issues, because GDP already takes into account inflation. So it's a great metric to be able to look at from year to year to year. However, it's not the important one that we need to pay attention to, rather, because that's going to depend upon how much we need to actually borrow. The more we need to borrow, the higher interest rates will go, by the way, because the more you need to sell into the market, the higher you need to offer the interest rates to entice enough people to buy everything that you're trying to sell into the market. So, that's kind of important, what the percentage of our federal budget is maintaining our debt or servicing our debt. That's the one that actually matters.
So hold on a sec. The Titan said it's 14%. I think 14% of the yearly budget goes into paying interest in the okay, so 14% of the budget goes into, yes, that I did not know that number, but that's a very big number. We are talking, however, what percentage of the GDP is the debt, and right now the percentage of GDP is 6.4%. But as a percentage of the budget, it's 14% is that's a huge percentage. Which segues into, I think, what you're saying, and one of the things that I wanted to get into, which is that's 14% that we can't spend on anything. We can't spend 14% of our budget on Medicare, Medicaid, anything else, because it's spent on interest servicing this debt. And again, Krugman would say, well, as long as you can afford it and are willing to pay that 14%, have it go up whatever you like. But imagine if instead of it being 14% of our budget, it became 50 or 60% of our budget, which is what happened in Greece. That's what happened in Greece. That's what caused the collapse in Greece, which was the just to service the debt that they owed became a stack. I think it topped out at about 60% of their budget, and they could not continue to operate a country and service the debt simultaneously. So what happened was a lot of the debt had to be forgiven, yada, yada, yada. That becomes a problem with the U.S. for any number of reasons. As Andrew pointed out, we're the largest country in the world by GDP. It's going to be very hard. There's nobody to bail us out. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah, and that's the issue that I have. And this is one of the reasons why I'm like, hey, fiscal and monetary policy matter, and we need to have sound policy, sustainable policy, because what we're doing, we cannot continue to do indefinitely. I said, I like Paul Krugman. There comes a point where a national debt, whether you can quote unquote afford it or not, where the sovereign debt will get to such a high amount that you'll just lose confidence. People will lose confidence that you can actually pay any of this stuff back, and they will hesitate to invest even more into the United States, because there will come a time, if that debt keeps growing, that you can't service it anymore. That's going to push interest rates up. And of course, the higher the debt you have, the more dramatic the change becomes when the more important interest rates become, which also leads us into another moral hazard of administrations. And I disliked it when Trump did it the first time. I disliked it when Biden did it. I never liked this when the government puts pressure on the Federal Reserve to manipulate, the Fed funds rate, in order to try and help the government from becoming insolvent. So the higher interest rates go, they're just going to put pressure on the Fed to lower the Fed's funds rate down to zero. I don't think they ever should have done that in the first place, because when that happens, that affects all interest rates everywhere. So now you're going to start having an explosion of credit, which we saw over the last since the 2008 crisis. The amount of credit, personal credit, has grown tremendously. The amount of business credit has grown tremendously. Everybody is leveraged up because debt was cheap, super cheap. It's like a lot of times you could go and borrow money, invest it into something else, and the returns on that investment were more than the 0.5% or 1% of interest that you paid on that particular loan, depending upon what kind of loan you got. I guess for private citizens, it would have been more like 3 to 4%. But if you had a 6% return, you would make money by borrowing money. Who wouldn't continue to just keep borrowing money? Because you're making more money than you're borrowing. Until the interest rate went back up to 4%. Now people are paying 6 to 7% on mortgages, and now the calculus changed tremendously. And because you borrowed, however many much money you had, the bigger your total debt is, well, the more dramatic the effect that a change in interest rates becomes. So as that debt rises, there's going to be a hell of a lot of pressure for the Fed to never raise rates, which again has a ripple effect throughout all of the rest of the economy, affecting personal lives. When you start looking at the world's economy, not just ours, because ours is very intricately tied with the rest of the world, it is such a vastly huge and complex system that trying to predict it is terribly difficult. You have no idea what problem is going to cause a cascading failure that becomes a debt crisis. Where you're going to start losing banks. Banks are like, hey, we are bankrupt, and if you don't bail us out, we're going to go under, and that'll be the end of the economy. So, let's go ahead, as George Bush liked to say, and we're going to have to put democracy on hold in order to save democracy. So yeah, it's a huge problem, and it's something that you should absolutely pay attention to. It doesn't cause that many issues. I mean, I still think it does cause some issues, but not that many. And I wouldn't be worried about a sudden collapse until it collapses.
All right, let me, 𝐍𝐬𝐜𝐴, $20 US. This was very early on. Sorry, I wanted to get quickly into just sort of the synopsis of what we're talking about. It sounds complicated. It's a little complicated, but I don't think it's too complicated, but I wanted to do, so we did our sort of intro, and then we went into things, so I am late. I hope you're still around. $20 US, and the US had its credit rating lower due to debt. Yes, that's what Moody's is saying. Whether that's why they did it is a good question. I suspect they've been looking for an excuse to do it for a while, because they've been the only ones who haven't done it, and they've been sticking out like a sore thumb. I think they probably are telling the truth. I think that is why. But so I think that's the largest contributing factor is the debt and the failure today to pass the bill. Honestly, either way, if it had passed as is, I think Moody's would have been like, okay, if they can pass a bill like that, because it significantly increases the debt. It's a bad bill. We are dramatically cutting revenue and increasing military spending, and cutting social services, which
I was going to say, and significantly cutting social services. And yet still we're increasing military spending enough, and we're leaving in tax cuts to the point that it's going to cause the debt to go up significantly. It's like you can't do all of these things and expect that to be able to do it for very long.
We're getting rid of the social safety net, and we're decreasing revenue. We're doing both at the same time. And what Congress has been selling is, what Trump has been selling is, this will increase the debt. Did I say increase? It will decrease. He's saying that this bill will decrease the... Yeah, it's not going to. Anyways, such a big day for Americans. Slide away. Slava Ukraine. Horoyam Slava. And then thank you, 𝐍𝐬𝐜𝐴, for that. We appreciate it, and we're sorry that we didn't get a chance to have that read while you were still here. UTV and Ham gifted 1 in-time membership. Thank you, sir, for your gift. We really do appreciate it, and thank you, everyone, for joining us. This can be a difficult topic and a bit of an overwhelming one, so we hope that we're providing an ability to at least get your head around why it's controversial and why. I mean, the long and the short of it is, it's the same thing that caused the collapse of some of the biggest financial banks in 2007, 2008, Lehman Brothers. Yes, thank you. Lehman Brothers was the first one to go, and what they were doing was selling products that they knew would fail, insuring against the failure of those products so that they could make the money back on the insurance, so that they would make more money on the insurance than the value of the products. And this is not a sound business model, but they were making so much money. Not in the long term. Thank you. That's a very important caveat. Not in the long term. They were selling the future of their companies. They were selling the future of the United States economy, as it turned out, for serious short-term and mid-term gains. Loads of money. They were making more money than basically Wall Street had ever made. Now, you had talked about what happens when you've leveraged debt and the debt is really high and the numbers suddenly change on you. The whole idea behind the Dodd-Frank Act was to limit how much you could leverage, and the very same banks that nearly destroyed us got rid of the Dodd-Frank Act. That was in place for 5 to 10 years, something like that. And we're back now in the same place where they can sell out the future for a present-day gain for themselves. And most of them, including, I don't know how much net worth the CEO of Lehman Brothers ended up being, but I imagine it was higher than your average American. And he was responsible in terms of job quality. He did one of the worst jobs of anybody around in any job anywhere in the United States. But he was able to make a tremendous amount of money selling out the future of his company along with everyone else who was doing the same thing. Politicians can do the exact same thing. They need to get elected. So they have to bring back programs that you like, even if they don't know yet how they're going to be spent, how anyone's going to spend for it, and if the spending hasn't been appropriated. So the deficit just keeps going up and up and up and up. Some of these programs are very badly needed. Others are not. Mitch McConnell is one of the ones who was very good at bringing in programs that, maybe helped out his district, but weren't necessarily very good for the rest of the country. He was able to get Oleg Gasparov off the, He was one of the oligarchs who was sanctioned for the invasion of Crimea, let alone once the larger invasion of Ukraine began. And Mitch McConnell got him off the list so that he could invest in an aluminum plant in McConnell's district, where McConnell's district is technically the entire state, but in his district where a town had been utterly devastated by the loss of aluminum. Obviously we want them to have work, but there was a reason that this guy was this oligarch was on the list of people that was having all his funds seized, and I'd rather have the funds go to Mitch McConnell's state than have this guy able to work again. He's a homicidal maniac. But unfortunately, that is one of the things about capitalism. It does tend to reward sociopathic behavior, unfortunately. Anyways, so we've talked about Krugman, who said, look, don't worry too much about these numbers. Oh, yeah, and I wanted to bring this one back up because you had said it's gone up exponentially, and you weren't kidding. This is it adjusted for inflation and includes the GDP. Why does it go up when the GDP goes up? So no matter how much debt you're in, this is basic human psychology. It doesn't matter how much debt you're in. As soon as the amount of revenue that you have starts going up, the amount of spending you have is going to go up too. People, they come up with the sort of norm baseline. As soon as our GDP started going up, people said, hey, let's spend more because now we're making more. Yeah, but we're still in debt. So you can see as that blue line, first of all, as it starts to pitch downward, our spending started to pitch downward accordingly. As the revenue went up, the spending skyrocketed. And when I say revenue, I'm sorry, that's not revenue, that's GDP. Revenue to the state is something else, but it is usually a function of GDP. How much it's a function of GDP is up to the state. It's based on taxes and yada, yada, yada. But GDP is usually the measure. How much are you producing versus what's your debt? And as our production, and keep in mind, again, the important thing about this, and I'll bring back the other number, the important thing about this is you can see it used to be our debt as part of our GDP was extraordinarily small. Now our GDP as a part of our debt is reasonably small. Our GDP is still not, and this is with inflation, accounted for inflation, it's still not as high as it was at the beginning of this chart, which is, I can't see, don't have my glasses on. But the debt has absolutely skyrocketed, and then this is it without the hold on a sec. There you go. So yeah, it's literally an exponential rise, and nobody knows how high that can go. My father used to always say, I'd ask him, why do people invest in the stock market? And he would always answer really what an economist would answer, which is because every time it goes down so far, it's gone back up again. That's it. It's the the induction answer. So far, every time there's been a crash in the stock market, it's recovered. Will it continue to do that? We don't know. Is there a cap at which suddenly no more money and the stocks aren't going to go up anymore? We don't know. We don't think so. There's no evidence of it, but we don't know. What is the highest that number can get to before there is a reckoning of some kind for the United States? We have no idea. Again, there are economists who say as long as you're servicing and can safely continue to service the interest, it doesn't matter. There's also ones who say, hey, you can print your way out. That's modern monetary policy. We still haven't gotten on a modern... I've had some debates with modern monetary policy theorists. Vox was one. They've never answered to my satisfaction the problem of how you solve for inflation when you print money. They're like, it's fake. It doesn't actually happen. Well, then why is it every time we print money there's inflation? When you increase the amount of any resource, the value of that resource goes down. That's a basic economic principle. If you increase the number of dollars in circulation, the value of each dollar is going to go down. Prices will go up. That's inflation. But
that's where us having the world reserve currency has helped us tremendously. Other countries can't do that. I mean, Greece is like, okay, well, we could try and print our way out, and they tried a bit of that. The problem is that for Greece, they risked, well, they actually got some pretty bad inflation, but they risked hyperinflation, getting to the point where the worth of their why can I not remember the name of
Dromica.
The worth of their money would drop to pretty much zero. And the one big thing that I guess when we start talking about this, there's a really big component called human nature to all of this.
I'm going to interrupt. I think they were in the EU by that time, so it wasn't the Dromica, it was the euro, and they're not allowed to print the euro. I think is right. Unless okay, yeah.
But yeah. they were talking about going back to their own.
Oh, that's right. Yes, they were. They were to bail so they could print their. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Now I remember. Thank
exactly.
you. Yep.
And that was the problem that they faced was hyperinflation. I mean, the U.S. Because we're all over the world, our dollar is all over the world. We can export a lot of inflation. We have to spread that around quite a lot. So when we do things like print money, it has a much smaller effect because we're huge. The US dollar is huge. So it will eventually happen, but it's really hard to kind of track because our US dollar is in so many different areas. It's like, okay, well, you have to go through and find out every time there's a price increase. It's like, okay, is this actually inflation? Inflation is an increase of the money supply, not just rising prices. Rising prices is a consequence of inflation because prices can rise because supply dropped.
Yeah.
or demand went skyrocketing. I mean, there's a supply and demand issue in prices as well. It's not just the amount of money that's in circulation. So with the US dollar being all around the world, trying to track that stuff is really difficult. And it's really caused a complacency towards inflation, at least till very recently. A lot more people got a lot more worried about inflation. Because for the longest time, we've been able to more or less offset the effects of any kind of inflation because we have the reserve currency. But what happens, because again, one of the big components to any economy anywhere is human nature and human perception, because it's humans engaging in the economy. That's what creates the economy. So what happens if, even if we're safely able to service the debt, and our debt to GDP ratio hasn't gotten so crazy that you would expect people to lose confidence, but people look around and just recognize, wow, the U.S. is doing all of this stuff, and not a single bit of it is sustainable long term. It's causing them quite a lot of benefits right now, but it's going to cost them a lot in the future. And maybe we should back off of this and look for our investment someplace else, because even though, they got dinged a little bit on their credit rating, but I think they're really probably going to collapse at some point if they keep this up. And so confidence drops off, and then that morning they open up the markets and they go to sell into the US government goes to sell treasuries into the US market, and nobody buys any. Well, that causes an immediate problem. You have two choices at this point. You either don't pay people, like anyone, because you suddenly don't have any money anywhere to do anything with. It's almost that immediate. Or you go to the Treasury, and which, of course, based off past actions, this is the course that would be taken. You go to the Treasury and say, hey, or the central bank, and you say, hey, we need you to buy treasuries, because nobody else is buying them. That's called quantitative easing. We used to call that monetizing the debt. And that was like the first death throes of a country's fiscal policy. Their entire government, that harbinger of doom that meant they were about to collapse, was as soon as they started monetizing their debt. And amazingly enough, we didn't get as much blowback from monetizing our debt in 2008 as I thought we would get, probably because they softened it up with, well, no, it's just an emergency measure. This is an unprecedented event. All of these things to placate people, to build up confidence that, no, we're not really monetizing we're monetizing the debt. So that would be the only problem. And if they actually had to do that because nobody else is buying our debt, that can only be done for so long until we're like, okay, well, now nobody's going to give us any money whatsoever, or even really interact with us or buy our goods or anything, because they can clearly see what's going on now. And then that's it. It's the government isn't going to be paying any SNAP benefits. The government won't be paying any Medicare bills, Medicaid, nothing. They will be able to pay literally nothing. And when that happens, it's a very short hop, step, and a jump to complete and utter collapse, because we'll have such a social unrest, being such a wealthy country, going from everything's rolling along fine to the government can no longer pay for anything at all. Let's just start adding zeros. That's going to be the next thing, and that'll just lead to hyperinflation, because there's only so many dollars the world can absorb, even if we stay on the US dollar, which is difficult to get off of because of how entrenched everything is in the US dollar. So it's not like BRICS is going to upset that tomorrow, but they're working on it.
Yes.
So you just look at this, and a lot of this is just hinged on confidence. Do people think that we can keep paying our bills? And then, of course, can we actually keep paying our bills? But those two are so closely linked together.
Yes.
That you just look at it, and the higher that debt goes, the more influence that has on people's perceptions, because we've already gotten to the point where almost nobody thinks that the U.S. can actually pay that back.
Yeah.
So that is the dangerous part. That's where the moral hazard comes in. It's like, yeah, it's fine until it isn't.
And that's the interesting thing about Krugman too, because he knows as much as any president knows, and Trump knows this more than most, actually, which is perception can create the reality. If you can increase the perception of the value of a product, you can increase the value of that product. It's a little counterintuitive, but that's what marketing is. That's what marketing is. That's all Trump does is marketing. He is great at branding utter horseshit into something that's sellable, and he does it. It works. I have no idea how. It's not because it has any intrinsic value. I guarantee you that. His meme coin is his meme coin. I kind of want to get one of his meme coin just because, in my view, that is the essential, the essence of Trump. Vapid.
You've got to get.
It doesn't exist.
We should pitch in. We should pitch in because I think there's some commemorative meme coins where they actually made I'm sure it's cheap metal, but they painted it up pretty. But you got to get one of those so that you can put it in your background back there, just so we can remember the Trump times forevermore.
And Titan made a very important correction, which is I said value, and he said it's the price, and he's correct. It's not the value, it's the price. Those aren't the same thing. The perceived the price is based on a perception of the value. So I erred. Thank you, Titan, for the correction. And for me, that BRICS would even try what it's trying like 5 years ago would be unprecedented. Now it's like they're taking a stab at it. Most economists that I've looked at have said that they don't think that there's any shot of them really doing it, but it's a deliberate attack on the U.S. the superiority of the U.S. economy, and I'm a little surprised that we don't take it more seriously, even if it were guaranteed to fail, and I'm not convinced it is, because I think we do have some troubles in our foundations that we're not addressing. But even if BRICS was guaranteed to fail, the fact that anyone is taking that kind of a sideways shot at our economy by trying to get off the dollar as the U.S. reserve, that in my mind should I mean that's not on the top of the New York Times is staggering. But then again, how many people understand the issue of the currency? But there was one other thing I wanted to let's see. So we were talking about the perception. So Krugman, yeah. So when Krugman says, "Oh well, the number doesn't matter," yeah. If you think it doesn't matter, then maybe it doesn't matter, at least until suddenly it does. This is, believe it or not, it's this kind of. It's a strange quantum certainty and uncertainty at the same time. What exactly matters and what doesn't?
Yes, we exist in a quantum state right at this moment, and the only way we're going to find out what happens is by seeing what happens.
By observing, yeah, exactly. It's economics is weird that way. Okay, there is something I have to do. I was going to do it even without the offer for the extra super chat, but I'm gonna do it anyway. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Tornado warnings this year. There. Sinister Porpoise, $2 super chat, asked to be read as a Count Von Count. It's not Count Chocula, but it's. I know who. I obviously I know who you're talking about. Congratulations.
Call him the Count.
The Count. Congratulations for having a good sense of humor about it, Porpoise, as you do about everything. Stay safe. So, sorry, no, so cheering for the Canadian dollar. Right now I'm cheering for the Canadian dollar. My hope is, there was one other issue, and I know as soon as we go to titles, I'm going to be sitting there going, here was the other one that I wanted to talk about in terms of, so we've got these 5 right now. So here's what makes handling this so difficult. One, it's political suicide, as Zandering has said. In order to deal with this, you have to tell people that we're going to have to start spending less money and and that if you go to Congress, you're going to bring home less back in services than the last guy who represented your district. That's not an easy thing to sell. So it's not impossible. It's been done, but it's hard, and it certainly isn't the majority right now. It's 5 conservatives on the budget committee. And the reason they're on the budget committee is because they chose to be there, because they take this seriously. The rest of Congress doesn't take it nearly as seriously as those guys do. So, which was a point I made earlier. Don't think that this is going to have any trouble passing Congress just because it's not out of committee yet. It's the people who have stopped it chose to be on that committee to stop bills like this. So, and how serious they are, I don't know. We discussed this earlier. Maybe they're just doing this for their constituents, and they know they're going to throw in the towel after the 3rd or 4th round. Or they're really serious about this. The language that they've been using smacks to me of people who are serious about this, which is a breath of fresh air coming from Republicans in Congress. In one case, they said we have to make more cuts to Medicaid. That is not a breath of fresh air, and that's something we've been hearing. Well, actually, that is something we haven't heard from very many, even Even Trump doesn't want to touch Medicaid. At least he says he doesn't want to, because he knows he can't get elected if he's going to start talking about cuts to Medicaid. But at any rate, these gentlemen have been honest about the fact that anybody who says that this bill is going to cut the deficit by any amount is lying. It's going to increase the deficit. It's going to increase it significantly because it cuts revenue in addition to a net gain in spending. So, I mean, do the math. So I kudos to them for doing that. How long they plan on sticking with it, I don't know. They voted with a united Democratic Party to keep this bill from going forward. Speaker Johnson said he wanted the bill passed through Congress, or through at least the House, by Monday. That looks like that's not going to be possible at this point. He said he's going to be working with everyone over the weekend. At least 1 or 2 of the gentlemen who voted against this bill have said, we're going home. No, sorry, bye. So we'll see what happens. But that's what they're worried about. Those are some of the reasons they're worried, and this is a crash course in the debt in the U.S., the sovereign debt, why it's an issue, why people are concerned about it, and why at present, short of the Democrats and these 4 men, I mean, keep in mind, and the only thing I'd like to point out, and I had a graph, I don't have it anymore, that at one point when in the 90s, when the budget was actually balanced, it was completely, we were spending what we were bringing in, and that was under Clinton. Clinton, a Democrat, the only one to balance the budget in recent history. So I don't know, but at least that's what those 5 are worried about. This is how it breaks down. We hope it has been educational. Come join us on the Discord. We can talk about it more on the Discord. I think at some point we'll bring in an economist to talk about it. Obviously, an economist is going to know far more than 𝐒𝐨𝐿𝐴𝐸𝐸 and I, but also it's already pretty wonky. Wonky, is that the word I'm looking for? Anyways, but this isn't the last time we're going to talk about it. But given the downgrade today in the U.S. U.S. rating, given the downgrade by Moody's, and given the and again, it's just political capital works very much in the same way. There's a reason they call it capital. It works very much in the same way that money does. It's horse trading in how much influence you have, and this did some significant, or showed at least some significant cracks in Johnson's power over Congress, and showed some significant cracks in the Trump administration, enough that Trump is talking about coming straight home to deal with this problem. And it's not because he's worried that we're not going to get a budget. We're not. We've got a budget passed, I think, so far for the end of the year. So the last, I think it was 2 months ago, was it? We passed
end of the fiscal year.
End of the fiscal year. When is that? Do you know?
September.
September. Oh yeah. Oh, thank you. Yep. So we've got a continuing resolution goes through September. We've got time. That's not why they're worried. They're worried because this is a big, beautiful bill, and it gives Trump everything he wants. It gives the military money in areas they've said they don't even need it, and it is a wish list to fill sort of every MAGA's dream. And the idea that it wouldn't sail through Congress is leaving him a poor taste in his mouth, it looks like. Anyways, that's what's going on. Any final thoughts, Xandering, before we get going?
My final thought would be, beyond something about times and interest, would be the reason people should care about this is because the bigger and longer that this goes on, that you run unsustainable policies, the greater the consequence when it comes apart. And there comes a point where the consequence gets to a point where it's overwhelming and going beyond. It's kind of like feeling pain. You can feel pain up to a certain point, and then your mind just kind of blanks out, and you don't feel any more pain, even though more damage is being done. Generally, I'm sure there's a biologist or a brain surgeon out there that will probably disagree with me on that, but generally, I mean, that's been my experience anyway. Same thing's would happen in the economy. It's like it's going to hurt if all of this comes apart right now. It's going to hurt a lot. It's going to hurt a lot of people. The longer this goes on, the bigger those numbers become, the more damage that can be done. So trying to get a handle on it sooner rather than later would be better, but as we've pointed out, we're not particularly good at, or we're pretty good at identifying potential future problems, not very good about fixing them now until they actually are affecting us now. So that's one of the reasons why I care so much about this, because it's like, hey, the longer we wait, the more pain we're going to have. It's like pain is going to be had no matter what we do to get back to a fiscally sound and responsible monetary system. That's going to be painful no matter what. The longer this goes on, the more painful it becomes. And I don't want to reach a point. I'm optimistic in that we haven't reached that point yet. That if there is some sort of economic collapse, that it's not going to cause a complete collapse of the United States and devolve it into a societal collapse as well. And I don't want the problem to get to that big. So, kind of like we would rather not have the earth cook, so let's maybe try and fix that now when it's a lot easier to do so than in 50, 60, 70 years, whenever we're going to start seeing significant problems from it, trying to fix it then. Yep. And we're not good at doing that. We've been living really well, and we've had relatively few problems, although if you really dig into the 2008 financial crisis and you realize how close we came to an economic collapse, it can be a little bit frightening. So I don't want to repeat 2008 with significantly, like triple and quadruple the numbers of problems, only not be able to pull it out at the last minute and avert the total collapse. I don't want to see that happen. Nobody wants to see that happen, because that would be the end of the United States, especially our influence across the world. Even if we didn't have a full-on economic collapse or a societal collapse, we're going to be economically dead on the world stage, and we're going to be passed over by many other countries. So, and that's going to lead to a much worse standard of living for the United States, especially if we lose that preferential treatment of the US dollar around the world. So that's why I care. That's why I pay attention. That's why I cheer what they're doing, and I question their motives for doing it, because they didn't seem to have a problem in the last 20 years when all of this was going on. So, because we passed all those budgets before, and they all increased the deficit. So we'll see what happens.
Free trade is about as close to an absolute good as there is, and I that's one thing I argue with people all the time when I start talking about tariffs or impeding on trade. I was like, free trade. I mean, in economics, free trade is about as close to an absolute good as you can get in anything. And one of the reasons the U.S. survived 2008 was because China now Japan has the majority of the U.S. debt, followed by the UK, followed by China. If memory serves, I'm reasonably sure that China's the third. But China has enough that if they started selling off all the U.S. debt, especially back in 2007, 2008, they could have wiped us out. They could have absolutely wiped us out. There'd be no U.S. And people will say, well, China is a hostile country. Why didn't they do that? If they had the opportunity to wipe us out, and Russia asked them to. Russia asked them to wipe out the United States of America, and they could have. The reason they didn't is because it wasn't in their best economic interest to do so. They held so much U.S. debt that if the U.S. went under, it would be a huge economic blow to China. So they could do it, but we were too interconnected. The more interconnected we become, the more dependent we become on each other's survival, and the more interested we become in the health and well-being of our neighboring countries, even the ones we don't like. And China, when they had an opportunity to take us out, didn't do it because it would have been economically disastrous for them, and they figured they had other ways. We weren't in a physical war with each other. Free trade stops wars. Free trade is what binds us together and helps us. Oh my God, I'm starting to do Star Wars. Speaking of Liam Wakefield, I have a bad feeling about this one. I'm gonna try this. Oh, wow. I am too sexy for the 𝐍𝐢𝐜𝐡𝐨𝐥𝐚𝐬. Oh, I have a bad feeling about whatever I just said. I've got a very bad feeling about what I just said. Member 6 months, Liam, thank you very much for your support. I think thank you. You're friends with LJ, aren't you? And I guess I need to apologize. So LJ has been telling people that I misread one of her super chats last time. That is a blatant lie. It is untrue. It is untrue because she knows it's untrue. I've explained it to her that I did not misread it. I may have misspoken it. I may have not accurately said what was on there, but I read it. I knew what it said. I read it accurately. I just wasn't going to repeat it accurately because, LJ, I know what's in your heart. I know you didn't mean it. And I know that if I had said verbatim what was in that super chat, you'd have come to regret it. Not now, maybe not a couple of weeks or a couple of months, but someday you'd be thinking about that goat and the little child that wants to see that goat, and you'd have regretted it. You're welcome. All right.
Nick, you missed your calling as a politician.
All right. So, but I will stand by. I did not misread that super chat. So no, I didn't. At any rate, I did miss my calling as that and or as an actor. You purposely. You see, LJ is really triggered over this goat thing. I don't know what it is with her and goats. I really don't want to know. I mean, listen, her private life is her private life. Whatever she wants to do, it's fine by me. I don't judge. I'm a YouTuber. I'm in no position to judge. So, all right. I agree with you. I question their motives. That's why I said, it's been a stunning day. I would have gone to breaking on the Moody's knocking us down to �AA1. Would have gone to breaking on the fact that they didn't pass the budget out of a Republican-controlled. Wow. So it's been a good day to catch up on these things and to try to understand what's going on. we're not going to know for a couple of days how serious these men are about it. And if they are serious about it, what can they do? The cuts in Medicare are extremely concerning. The military, if we decided not to, say, alienate NATO, alienate Canada, alienate our allies, and make fun of people, then we could maybe work with those alliances so we didn't need to be spending more money than the other 10 countries, top 10 countries combined.
I just had a frightening thought.
Yes.
You mentioned if you hadn't been alienating all of these places.
Yep.
What if Trump knows something that we don't know? Well, obviously he does, because he knows what he intends to do.
Yeah.
But what if his kind of plan is, I've been kind of floating this out there, hey, Greenland, we want you, Canada, 51st state, essentially authorize military force against cartels by labeling them, terrorism, international terrorist organizations. What if his plan is to actually follow through on that stuff, and he's going to take Panama, he's going to take Greenland, he's going to take Canada, and he'll do it by force. And he knows he's going to do that. So he's got to get defense spending up higher in order to have all of the equipment to try and do that. I mean, I don't think you could, but I mean, this is Trump, and he thinks he can do anything. So,
well, yeah, there's things that you and I both would say you can't do when he is successfully done. I mean, if you and I were talking, imagine you and I having a conversation the day before he kidnapped people in Portland. You and I would say he can't do that. There's no way he'd be in jail if he does that. And now we're going like we wish we would like to go back to those days. Yeah, that's a scary thought. Thank you for that.
I can't leave you with hope and optimism.
No, I've noticed.
I have to crush it.
Thank you. Well done. You have. No, you have, but for one thing, which is, I think I will, going forward, take more seriously the idea that that's a possibility in his head. I also think he is very fluid. I think he does not like plans. He does not like anything that's static and can't change. And if something isn't working, he's just going to go another way. And it's, again, the spaghetti against the wall. Whichever one sticks is the one he's going to go with, and he's going to say that was his plan the whole time. So I think you may have a point, and invading Panama may be much higher up on his to-do list than I'd given credit for, that he's already decided to do it. I don't know. I have a hard time understanding what he does or does not decide to do. Anyways, hold on one second. I need to get this. This is... I need to get this book here. Sorry. So this is from the library behind me. This is the In Time rule book. And I'm looking for... Did we get that amendment through about me reading super chats? Because we did get someone who did a super chat, but it was after you had done your final goodbye. I had done my final. I was doing my final goodbye, and I was literally about to hit the button. Is there now? I remember an amendment trying to pass 189, 190. Shoot, I really do need my glasses. An amendment saying that we didn't have to read super chats past the point of final thoughts. Did that ever pass? Do you remember? Do I have to read it? Do I have to read that super chat?
Yeah, I did remember that. We argued intensely over the pros and cons. You got the whiteboard out to go through this so that we could flow chart this.
Yep.
And I do believe that the final consensus, with you abstaining and protest, was that the people who are actually paying the bills for this show to continue running ought to have their voices heard, and that even if a super chat comes in after final thoughts began, that we were still obliged to read them, because if people thought that we didn't care about their support and acknowledge it any longer, that they may stop supporting it, and you'd be out of a job. And then I wouldn't get my paycheck. And all of that money that's gone into my college fund would evaporate. So
porpoise.
That's how that
Yeah, Porpoise has worked hard on your college fund. That sounds awfully democratic and fair, which is probably why it's so distasteful. I really, oh dear. Okay. All right. I remember the whiteboard. I remember Titan going, "Oh God, really?" And I was just like, "Well, no, hear me out." He goes, "I don't. I already know what you're going to say." It was. Nobody really. All right. So, $10. Blonde Bombsheller. Please, God, bless the goat I love so much. I, Nick Suter, love the goat. I will be avenged. You see, I can add to super chats too, not just take away. That's my own super. I'm going to do my own super chat. Okay, so Sinister Porpoise 256, Goat Lives Matter. What the? I'm starting to. You do a thing with a goat, you try to make people happy. Now, okay, when I said do a thing with a goat, okay, that could be taken out of context.
You should probably, thank you very much for joining us tonight. It's been lovely explaining our thoughts about economic policy, fiscal and monetary policy, and what some of the dangers could be. I believe our next show ought to be in time on Tuesday. We have a very special guest.
I'm taking away your control of the mute button. Jesus.
Oh, is that what?
Yeah.
What you're gonna do?
Okay. All right. Well, it's probably just as good that I was muted. I think we're going to stay monetized because I was muted. I
have only your best interests at heart. I don't know why. You liberal scum. But you've kind of grown on me like a bad mold.
Yeah,
like maybe athlete's foot. Or jaw rot. Oh
dear. Okay, so much for the staying monetized. Anyways, it was a nice dream while
that is a legitimate medical condition, and it is caused by a fungus. So,
well, so is being a fan of liberals. $20, Duncan, God bless goats. Wow. Okay, so we basically have a live chat in full road. Do we have a book on do I have an emergency? Do I have the lifeboat?
I am going to find you. No, I'm going to search. I'm going to scour all of the trinket shops, all the souvenir shops on all of my travels. I will find you a straw goat, and I am going to mail it to you, or I might threaten you with actually showing up at your house again. And present to you said goat to put in your background.
We will do that. Lance will appreciate it. Lance is still like, you really got a hippo. I was like, yes, how could I not get a hippo? I'm going to get a hippo and I'm going to get a lobster. Still haven't gotten the lobster. I want to get the one that says the sweet taste of hierarchy. We'll get there. All right. 2 pounds and the dog.
Just realize.
Yes.
Just realize real quick that as soon as you place the goat up there, the challenge is going to go out to burn that goat down.
It's my house. I live. You realize that if you had not said anything, how am I going to sleep at night? I'd have been perfectly fine if you had just kept your mouth shut. Nobody. The next super chat's going to be like, does anyone know Nick's address? Xandering.
Did you miss the part where I said I can't believe I'm supporting you, you liberal scum?
No, I caught that.
Okay, well, yeah. Now you understand my motivations now.
Yeah, you're supporting me by helping people incentivize burning down my house and my set, which I worked very hard on.
This is why you do not dock the pay of your co-host for being late, showing up, finally being able to connect, and then not saying anything because the conversation was going so great till right at the end. I'm like, okay, I can't stay quiet about this anymore because, I mean, this is just ridiculous.
I told you yesterday it had nothing to do with you being late. It had nothing to do with you coming in at the end. It was inflation. Okay, your pay went down because of inflation.
Which is another reason why I insisted on doing this show, and then you decided to jump the gun and go with a live, and you didn't want to do it too long, and then ended up rambling on for 48 minutes. And I was like, if you're going to go on that long, we should have just added another hour to that and done with the show.
Yeah, and had all the goat burning in my house. I think it's against the lease to burn a goat on the premises.
Well,
I mean,
since you
I
won't
could
be
look
burning
into
the
it.
goat, somebody else will be doing it. You
Yeah.
won't be held responsible, so it's not in violation of your lease.
Okay. You really sound like you're trying to make this happen. With friends like you. Wow. Okay. This show really took a hard left.
Hey,
Liam,
we just talked about like the potential end of the United States on the world stage, if not in its entirety. We can't leave it there.
well,
As much as I want to leave you in dark, crippling despair about the future.
Yeah, okay, so instead, let's talk about burning down Nick's home. That's thank you. That's so
At
much
least
better.
that will be fun for us.
I was going to say, if you feel like I need support, if you want to support me when I have a co-host like 𝐒𝐨𝐿𝐼𝐜𝐴𝐿, you can super chat your support to me. And 𝐒𝐿𝐼𝐜𝐴𝐿 super chats are going to go up like 300%. They're going to be like, "Oh, go get him, 𝐒𝐿𝐼𝐜𝐴𝐿. I'm going to read this. I'm going to bail. The last Liam Wakefield, I really don't want to. I'd like
conservative, libertarian style person on a liberal leaning news organization. Do you really think that my support's going to go up? That people are even super chatting because I'm here?
Well,
like you do all the work. I just show up occasionally.
Well, you have a college fund for your course in women's studies.
Can I even pay tuition on a single? I know I can't. I know I can't buy a book yet, but can I at least pay the tuition on a local community college yet?
I think so. I mean, again, we have to inflation, but we'll look at it. I think so. Wouldn't surprise me. Okay, so Liam is continuing to cause trouble. 2 British pounds sterling. And the dog shall lay with the goat. I don't want to know who the dog is. I don't want to know who the goat is. Frankly, this show has just gone on way too long. I'm not paid enough for this, and I'm just one guy. Okay, Liam Wakefield, another 2 pounds. Goat in peace, my children. Try to do something nice. Figured chat would like it. Put a little goat up on the screen. Everyone wants to burn it down. All right. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you for having a good time with us and for supporting us and having a marvelous time. Thank you, 𝐒𝐿𝐼𝐜𝐴𝐿. Thank you to the mods. And what's the opposite of a thank you without using a curse word? F you to whoever did not allow me to change the super chat rules because we've been getting an increasing number of malicious super chats, and I don't think I should have to read them. But we'll discuss that at the staff meeting where we talk about you showing up to shows. Have a good night, everyone, and we'll see you Tuesday.
I can't wait to miss that.
Yeah.
Tuesday, where I may or may not still have a job. We will we'll see you then. Have a great night, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
So this is how liberty dies. With thunderous applause.